I can't believe it's already December and we're gonna start 2020. This year, surprisingly, I am ahead on my Christmas shopping and I'm actually DIYing a lot of them. So I decided to show you all some DIY Christmas gifts that people actually want and that I actually want to give. Now, I love making gifts. I love the process. I love the creative outlet. It's so much fun for me to do, and the gift just feels so much more meaningful that way. But like everyone, December isn't the most friendliest when it comes to having a lot of time to make things. So the DIYs I have chosen for this video range from really easy, like 5-minute crafts, actually really 5-minute crafts, to a little bit more advanced and time consuming, but all of them you can do in the comfort of your own home while you are having a cup of coffee or while you are watching your favorite Christmas show. They are really all great things to do like busy work while you're just sitting there. Not to mention they are all really relaxing and super fun to create, and I am sure that anyone you give these gifts to will love it. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into our first project. So first up is a super easy recipe. This is for any coffee lover or tea lover or someone who just loves a warm cup of something in the morning. So we're gonna be making a chai tea mix from scratch. So all of these ingredients will need to be ground. If you do not have them ground, you can grind them in a coffee grinder. Just make sure there are no clumps and that it's all fine. So in a cute little jar, I got these from IKEA, add 1 teaspoon of ground cardamom, 3 tablespoons of ground cinnamon, 1 tablespoon of ground ginger, half a tablespoon of ground allspice, half a tablespoon of ground cloves, and half a tablespoon of ground nutmeg. So mix that all together. I'm gonna make this a little more festive. I'm gonna get some jute. I also have this floral tape along with some fake pines that I'm gonna bunch together. This is really simple to do. So start off with a piece of wire and start wrapping the wire with the floral tape. Then add in different branches of pine, flowers. You can get creative here. Whatever sort of holiday festive look you are trying to achieve. Add your jute into the mix and then finish wrapping it off, and then continue wrapping your jute around the top of the jar. The more the merrier. It just really adds this kind of rustic feel to it. And then tie it off with your little adornment. I grabbed a piece of brown paper and I'm writing chai mix on this to make it cute. You could even write instructions on the back. You'll only need 1 teaspoon of this mix per cup. My personal favorite is mixing this with a cup of coconut milk that's steamed, adding a double shot of espresso, a little bit of sugar, and now you got yourself a delicious dirty chai. These are really inexpensive and seriously make great gifts because they don't have any of the preservatives that the normal chai mix would have, like if you were to go to Starbucks or something. None of that aspartame, it's all just raw and organic. Next, we're gonna create a super cute Tassel keychain. This one again is a really quick and inexpensive DIY. You can customize it to whatever colors that you like, but what you're going to need for this DIY is different color thread. I'm using 4 different colors here, and I'm just using embroidery thread. 1 packet of this embroidery thread is going to equal 1 tassel. You also need some beads and a little lobster claw hook or keychain, but we'll get into that later. So let's start off by making our tassels. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. I personally like using this method. I feel like the tassel comes out a lot better. So grab a thick cardboard or a piece of paper that is 2 inches wide. Then begin wrapping your thread around this for as many times as you can, leaving about 12 inches of thread unused. Once you have that fully wrapped around, grab it tightly with your fingers and snip off the top of the thread. Then you're going to grab a piece of the thread that you saved, and you're going to find the center of the thread and tie it tightly in the center. Snip off the bottom portion and fold that in half. Then you're gonna grab another piece of thread and kind of bunch it at the top and tie it around tightly on the top, tie it in a knot, making sure that the bottom of the tassel is nice and even. I would recommend brushing this out with a comb. I didn't show it on video, but I did do this afterwards. After you brush it, even out the bottom portion, and you now have a cute little tassel. The alternative way to create this, if you are in a pickle and you're in a rush, you can literally just grab the thread out from the embroidery packaging, take off one loop, saving about 6 inches of thread, folding that in half and tying off the top with that thread that you just cut off. Make sure to tie it off tightly so you don't have any loose threads. I would recommend tying it off first in the center before you tie it off into a tassel, just because I did notice some loose threads here and there when I didn't do that. Then all you have to do is cut off the circle portions on the bottom, fluff it out, comb it out, and you now have a tassel. So the way that we're gonna make this keychain is grab your first tassel, flip it upside down, shake it out, find the center of it, and you wanna grab a needle with some thread, tie off the thread on the end, make sure your piece of thread is long enough, and then you're gonna place a bead onto the thread and find the center of that tassel, stick it underneath, come up the top of the tassel, and pull that thread tightly so the bead is hidden underneath the tassel. So then you're going to measure to see where you want the tassel to lay on top of it. You can try tying it in a knot, but I found that this didn't work and it wasn't very stable. So I just decided to add more beads. You're not gonna see these, so they don't need to be pretty. I'm just using these little pearl beads. And I've added about 4 to 6 beads in between each tassel. So add those beads, repeat the same step by finding the center of the tassel, sticking that through, and continue all the way to the top. Once you have reached the top or the last tassel, you can decorate this with any sort of bead you want. I'm using this really pretty crystal decorative bead that I have. And then I'm also attaching the thread onto a jump ring. After doing this, I would recommend not doing this, because the thread is so thin and it just slips out of the jump ring, so you can just attach it directly to your keychain here. Tie it off in a knot, shake out your little tassel, and you now have this super cute keychain that someone can use for their bag or their purse or their keys, or you could even attach it to the top of the gift to add a little bit of extra decoration. But I've seen these little tassel keychains everywhere, and I have personally been wanting to buy one, but have been holding back because I know I can make it. And now you can. Next up, we're gonna create some burning bundles, also known as smudge sticks. And I feel like these are just the perfect gift for the end of the year because you can clean your space by burning these herbs and letting the smoke cleanse and clean the area. I'll put a link in the description on which items are safe to use. Whichever items that you do use, make sure that they are pesticide free. So I'm using white sage, and this is actually from my garden, and I started growing this a couple years ago, and I'm really excited to finally use it. I also grabbed some lavender from my garden as well. And for this one, I decided to use rose petals because it would add a really nice little spark of color. And I also had roses in my house that were beginning to wilt, so it's a good way to use them instead of throwing them out. So to bundle everything together, you will need some sort of cord. I am using hemp cord. You can also use cotton. Just make sure that it is safe to burn. I'm starting off by grabbing some sage. Make sure that these are washed and there are no bugs inside. You're gonna grab the branches tightly and kind of close them down as tight as you can without breaking them. So then I prepped my lavender and I've taken off all of the leaves, leaving only the stem and the flower. And I'm placing all of my lavender right on top of the sage, and then I'm tying a knot to grab them all together and keep them in place. And then just wrap the cord around the herbs, winding downwards, and then I decided to wind up and add some petals on this portion. You want to make sure to wrap it tightly first before you add the petals, because when you hang these to dry, they're going to shrink, so you want to make sure everything sticks together. So I decided to add the petals after I wrapped it tightly initially, because the petals are very delicate and they seemed to rip if you tied them too tightly. So tie that off, leaving a little excess string at the top. And like I mentioned before, we're going to hang these to dry. So you want to hang them upside down, making sure that they are in a cool shaded area. I put mine in the garage because they don't get any sun there. And you're gonna wanna let them dry for 7 to 10 days. So if you are going to be making these as gifts and giving them for the holidays, make sure to give yourself enough time or let them know that they need to hang them to dry before they use them. These make such great gifts. They're so thoughtful, and the idea that they're handmade with love just adds more to this item. So next up, we're gonna create a beautiful whimsical dream catcher. I always love adding dream catchers to a space, and there are multiple ways that you can customize this and make it your own to fit whoever you're giving the gift to. You can choose different colors or beads or crystals and feathers, whatever you like to really personalize and customize this piece for whoever you're giving it to. So I've done a couple Dreamcatcher DIYs on this channel already, but I haven't done one that has this crescent moon shape on it. So that's what I'm going to show you today. You are going to need 2 different sizes of these rings. I grabbed the largest one I could find, and then in the store just placed it inside of it to see what kind of shape I wanted. You're also going to need some yarn. So for this project, I'm using 2 different types of yarn. One that is more like woolly and fuzzy, and is very airy and whimsical looking, and the other one is thinner and has a really cool texture to it, and it shines in the light really cool. So I'm actually going to begin wrapping my rings with the smaller one. If you use a smaller one, just fair warning, it does take longer. This took about an hour to wrap both of these guys. So I'm starting off by tying a knot at the top, making sure that the 2 rings are centered. Then I'm going to wrap the yarn around both of the rings to add some stability to it. And then once I get to where the 2 rings separate, I'm going to not wrap the outer ring, but only wrap the smaller inner ring first. So I'm wrapping the small inner ring first. I don't need to show how I did that just because it's so boring. So you can do this while you're watching TV or whatever. Once you get back around the top, wrap so you can't wrap the inner circle anymore, and then add more stability by wrapping the 2 rings together. So I actually had enough thread to continue wrapping, so I began wrapping the outer ring. So continue wrapping that all the way until you reach the top, add more stability again, and then tie it off in a knot at the top in the center. So that's the part that takes the longest. So now that we got that done, we are going to add a little bit of webbing inside of the crescent shape. I'm just using a white piece of thread. You can grab some beads here to add them onto the string. And I probably should have cut this a little bit longer to make my life easier, but wrap only the crescent portion of the dream catcher. You can really go crazy with it, pull in the strings in different directions, however you see fit and whatever you're happy with. So once you've done that, now we're going to add the larger dangly portions. So I am just cutting a long piece of this thick thread and grabbing it by the center and then looping it around the ring so that it hangs nicely. I'm also adding some of this smaller thread in here as well, just because I like the way they look together. And then continue this for the bottom portion of the ring. I decided to actually braid some of these together and loosen some of the yarn so that it looks like it's a little bit more worn and torn. It also gives it a nice, fluffy, airy feel. And then what I decided to do is add some color. So I have Rit dye that I just put in a bowl. I added some salt and vinegar. Make sure to read the directions before you use this. And I am just dipping the bottom portion of the dream catcher into this bowl so that it can absorb some of the color. Now, if you want to create a gradient like I'm attempting to do, only leave the top portion in the water just a little bit. You want to get it wet, but you don't want it to soak up too much color. So then once it's wet, pull it out a little more and then let the bottom portion sit in the dye longer so that it soaks it up. You can add a little bit more dye here like I did, mix it around and then let it sit in there to absorb more color. Then wring it out and hang it to dry. I'm going to cut this so that it is longer in the center, kind of creating this little V shape. And then, just adjust it, fluff it up, do your thing to make it look nice. And that's all I did for this lovely dream catcher. It reminds me of unicorn hair for some reason. I'm gonna call it my unicorn hair dream catcher. Maybe I'll put some crystals in this one. But there you have a really easy personalized gift that I think anyone will appreciate. I hope you all enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, please be sure to tag me on Instagram and Twitter. I would love to see your projects. Also, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new, and also check out some more DIYs of mine that I did for the holidays. You know you want to. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.